Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have 1934's The Man Who Knew Too Much, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. We have 1956's The Man Who Knew Too Much by Alfred Hitchcock. We have 1979's Hardcore by Paul Schrader. And finally, we have our movies now in theaters. That's Boy Kills World by Moritz Moore. And finally, Challengers, directed by Luca Guadagnino. So it is going to be a great, diverse show this week, folks. Stay tuned and enjoy. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Thomas, how's it going?
It's going okay. On this side of the table, how was your week of movies?
The week was real good. I was happy with this week, and obviously under the gun with all we're prepping for the con coming up.
Yes, we do have the event this Sunday, yes.
Yeah, right off the top, folks, we will be at Fan Expo in Philadelphia on Sunday, May the 5th, discussing Star Wars after May the 4th, which is maybe a little bit of a death wish, but especially because we're going to be a little critical of Star Wars as well. But yeah, it should be a great time. But honestly, I was stressed out about this week. You knew I was stressed out about this week. I
told you to do 3 movies.
Right. Honestly, each movie kept me, save maybe one. Kept me really wanting to watch and write about them as well. So this was a good week for that.
And this is our intro into Alfred Hitchcock because we're doing our Hitchcock study now.
Yeah.
So we're going to have him, showcasing a little bit.
Yeah.
Stopping in every week, Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah. Hitchcock is just way too, there's just too many movies to do our normal kind of like director studies. So a la the Fred Astaire February, we'll be doing Hitchcock May. Presumably probably for the next 3 Mays, because even my short list is like way long. Yeah. This week knocking out 2, which I'm happy to, and
I think it's the way to go to pair these up.
Yeah,
not many directors make
their own remakes.
It was more of a popular thing like back in the day. But it wasn't so blatant. Like for instance, so Howard Hawks basically redid Rio Bravo.
Okay.
But they called it El Dorado, and they changed the name of the, you know what I mean? Like the story was changed, but even Howard Hawks goes, everybody liked Rio Bravo, so we made it again, and it turned out everybody liked that one too. But things were changed. This is literally The Man Who Knew Too Much, and then The Man Who Knew Too Much.
Exactly.
Which is like, I don't know, it's awesome, it's Hitchcock.
Yeah.
It's great. And then we're doing a Paul Schrader hardcore film, which
a hardcore film called Hardcore. Man, this was a recommendation from you, of course, Tom. Folks at home, this is a doozy of a film, and another feather in the cap for George C. Scott.
That's really what it was. It was last Friday, and I just wanted to watch going through George C. Scott, and then I was looking at names involved, and I was like, let's do it. Let's click play. Shout out to another movie podcast. So I always try to listen to a bunch of podcasts now and try to just see what other people are doing and whatever. One of the few kind of film podcasts I actually really like are called The Rewatchables, and shout out to them because I watched this film on Friday. Saturday, you were like, I don't know what my 4th slot's going to be or my 5th slot. I was like, oh, you should probably watch this, Hardcore. And then you wrote it down. You were like, all right, I'll watch that. 2 days later, then The Rewatchables comes out with an episode, and they cover Hardcore. Which is hilarious.
True happen chance.
It really is. Yeah. So, but that was awesome. So it was a very hardcore week, which was kind of funny. But
Absolutely.
Great listen. They have a whole different way of going about their show. It's much closer to our new special we introduced.
Sure.
It's more so of a deep dive into the film and everything.
Yeah, from what you showed me, it's a good group of guys too.
Yeah, definitely. It's another good podcast. But who would have thought everyone's doing hardcore? It's awesome.
Yeah. Right, who's picking out this 1979 movie?
And then Challengers is doing, everyone very critically appraised. I'm excited to talk to you about it. Really give us a heads or tails and be real.
Sure. Why? You think some of the audience consensus is lower?
Well, technically it is lower, and it's also, I don't know, I've been hearing conflicting things, and I want to be excited for the film. I can't quite get there yet. Like, I almost went to the theaters. It was like late Sunday, very late showing.
Right.
And I was like, I'm actually going to wait for Vin on this one. I'm going to use our podcast and how other people use
That's
it.
That's fantastic.
And do I give this a watch or not?
That's good.
But
alternative title for this week is Music to My Ears, Movie Posters to My Eyes. and almost every one of these has a excellent movie poster and an excellent soundtrack. So,
by the way, I like the weekly dubbing. I like how you're labeling these now. Past couple weeks, the theme of the week or whatever.
Right. Well, I mean, it really comes from just like writing all these notes, and it's just like, I guess there's some overlap. If I had to really make an argument for some overlap.
Okay, all right. Well, let's kind of jump back to 1934.
Way back.
That's 90 years, if my math is correct.
I think it is.
This is kind of one of the first from Alfred Hitchcock's. Not the first, I don't think.
Right, yep.
But it's one that really kind of enters him in. It's pretty highly praised. It's 1934, The Man Who Knew Too Much. Set up the film. Tell us what it's about. And most importantly, then, how does it deliver? How'd you like it 90 years later?
Yeah, I mean, I think my quick elevator pitch for this film is that if you are interested in spy, espionage thrillers, not only is this pre-World War II, but this is something, I mean, a very interesting early kind of spy thriller to it. Also, let me start with saying that this is probably one of the most recognizable film posters from this era of movies. I have a passing interest in movie poster design, and this one always sticks in my head. I really love this movie poster.
There's something unsettling about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That goblin-like appearance to Peter Lorre draws you in, and while I can't be sure, it also feels like possibly one of the earliest posters to really feature the villain being the draw for a film, which is something we actually lose in the remake. It's just much more about Doris Day and Jimmy Stewart as leading roles. But, I mean, not something I could reliably verify in the juggling act of this week, but it really did feel like, wow, that's like a villain poster. It's just really, really iconic.
Trying to think back how old was The Laughing Man?
That was older. I think that's 32.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
It's getting there.
Yeah, it's getting there.
I don't know, Dracula, the original Dracula?
Sure. Maybe Invisible Man or something like that.
Right.
The Paramount stuff. But yeah.
Well, I don't want to tear apart your horror your thesis now.
my horror theory. But either way, really nice poster.
Yes.
I love it. I love it so
Definitely
much.
different.
Yeah.
What is this based? The Man Who Knew Too Much. Is this, there's a lot of writers attached to it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of different back then. Like, you just have like scenario or additional dialogue. Was this a property or a play or a book or poem or?
Apparently, my research is that it's a 1922 book that Hitchcock, through his studio in London during this time period, this is his like London era, as it's referred to. He just had the rights to the name, so he just used the name. So nothing connected to a book.
Wow, okay.
And then as we look to the remake in comparison to this, I have that kind of section in the review of the 56 movie, but it's very different, but also the same. It's kind of hard to pin down. It's all right. It really boils down to one movie is 75 minutes, and the other is a 2-hour feature.
Yes, I was looking at that right now. Yeah. An hour and 15 minutes this first one.
Oh, it was a dream. It was a dream, especially this week.
So what's it about? Get us into it.
Yeah. The Man Who Knew Too Much is a proto-espionage thriller that puts a family in the center of an assassination plot and a hostage situation to keep their mouths shut about it. Initially, it's set in the Swiss Alps. We see our character Bob and Jill Lawrence rubbing elbows with the elite and well-connected themselves. When the information of assassination plot is passed to them, paranoia spirals into murder, trying to plug the leak of who knows what and what will transpire. Behind all of this is a mysterious collection of different walks of life, conspiring towards the same goals. And to achieve those goals, they need to keep our vacationing couple quiet. At the hands of a villain iconic enough to hijack the whole movie poster, the eccentric Abbott kidnaps their daughter with promises to release her only when the killing is through. I really did enjoy this film. Just kind of quick notes with Hitchcock itself. A whole month dedicated to explore what many consider the greatest director that's ever lived. My personal skin in the game, and this kind of plays into why starting with this 1934 film. My personal skin in the game is to watch a huge catalog of films I've never seen. And in the process, so to speak, kind of make my bones as a reviewer in what I would consider, required cinematic knowledge. I've never seen this film. I've never seen the sequel or the remake. And as an early pick, it's one I've always wanted to research. 1934 puts us among the earliest films we've covered on the podcast, alongside of, early Fred Astaire and like some horror things that we've explored in October. And like I said, it already belongs to Hitchcock's London era, which is where he kind of cemented the thriller as a genre.
Right.
And specifically before he goes to Hollywood. And as you see with the lineup this week, this is, the fact that we get a remake of the film in 1956, no less redirected by Hitchcock, was something I was just super interested to check out. So that's where we land with, out of the huge amount of films that he has, and high-quality films, why we're landing on this one first.
I think we talked about it, I don't know, last week or 2 weeks ago when we were kind of saying, what do you want to do first? And I like the idea of going back early like this, jumping to some of his earlier stuff, because I think my argument for doing that was along the way, we're going to see him learn more and more and more, kind of. Seeing the breadcrumbs of what we get to some of his biggest pictures in the late 50s or early 60s or something like that.
Sure. And the desire to cover the 56 remake was
that just makes sense.
Boiling down to a quote from Hitchcock where he says, the first was the work of an amateur, this work is the work of a professional. And I wanted to see where that was refined, basically.
That's just cool.
Yeah.
Because we almost never get it.
Yeah.
Literally.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Definitely an anomaly. And I was really itching as well, because at the point of finishing this movie, I think I had hardcore under my belt. And there was this one, and I saw the theater watches. I was like, maybe we'll just do 4. But I finished this, and I was like, I have to see what
it's just
goes
gave
on
you that
in 56.
feeling. Yeah.
This is a very old movie, folks. But oddly enough, the place that the film shows its age the most is in the reaction of the kidnapping. I wouldn't say that the parents are comfortable with this hostage situation, but it's a bit too calm to sell the intensity, sell the stakes. I would say that's a major criticism of this, because I can't imagine the mentality in 34 being any different if you get your child kidnapped and held for ransom, that you wouldn't be freaking out. They're just like way too calm about it. It's just like, they're like, all right, we'll go back to London and we'll wait it out. It's just like, what? This also strikes an interesting quality of something that I've commented on in the past, where films between world wars have a unexpected story bit to them. The framing of this assassination is directly compared to Franz Ferdinand, expecting the audience to grasp the stakes of what that means with World War I. But what surprised me here was, once again, a look at these espionage stylings in the story long before Ian Fleming ever put pen to paper. Long before, a decade before World War II. And it's just like, it was so interesting to me to watch this, and this be a very political, a very international type of jet set, if you will. They go from the Alps to London.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm cool with that, yeah.
I feel like those aspects, I was like, wow, these themes of espionage, spy thrillers, they were there before James Bond, or even maybe, I don't know, a normal thriller that just happened to be about spies in some sort of way. It was kind of eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, go back all the way 90 years, 1934.
Right.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. Because it's very us, this exact genre. Is something that you and I can totally agree on.
Yeah.
It's hard not to miss, even though things don't work quite right.
Right.
It's electric.
Yeah, absolutely. Hitchcock definitely earns his title as the master of suspense, and comes out swinging with this, immediately hooking us with a mysterious killing. The most impressive aspect was how it all unfolded, though, folks. Sometimes watching old films, It can feel formulaic only because it's where the formula started and maybe just feels a little dry. However, here it completely avoids that, even in a way that the remake doesn't. Especially in the wild card of this terrorist group, it really feels like our characters have stumbled into just a messy, messy situation, and at no point are we certain of what they're capable of, whether the terrorist group, we're not really certain what our protagonists, the Lawrences, are capable of either. You know, we get this feeling from the get-go as well, with almost every character having shifting motivations in this Swiss Alp, resort. This made for a real-ass mystery watching it. And, this was something that I think got refined in the remake, where, and I'll comment on it plenty for the 56 remake, that everything is fine-tuned. Here, though, the best quality of this is how wild it feels and how unpredictable and fast it feels. Once again, a product of 75-minute runtime.
Yeah,
they don't got time for
literally
anything
just
else.
a fast movie.
Yeah, but it felt chaotic in the way of I didn't know where this mystery was going to unfold, even though kind of I knew the broad strokes of the story,
right.
Just from kind of general cinema knowledge.
Were things established enough as far as your characters, plot, and theming? Was there enough glue to keep it together, or were things moving along too fast? Because I can only imagine for an hour and 15 minutes how fast you need to get into things. So do we sit enough with our characters? Do we even, get the plot down enough?
That's where I say it would be lacking.
Okay.
And a perfect example is just, again, we don't really get a great reaction out of our two leads that their children their child has been kidnapped.
Right.
No less, that there's a killing, there's an assassination plot in this. So I guess in that aspect, no. I feel like this really did flourish in visual storytelling, though. I feel like coming out of 34, I think, again, I haven't done full research, but I think The Lodge or The Lodger is 32. That's his first talkie. Hitchcock,
Okay.
that is.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to that, I feel like he's leaning a lot more on visual storytelling and maybe doesn't need or feel the need to have these themes fleshed out through dialogue and whatnot.
It is very him. I mean,
Yeah.
some of his films that we're going to get into,
Right.
it's all about just what's the image on screen.
Sure.
Or what's happening on screen, even without
Absolutely.
the dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. Or very much how we'll tune into, with future films like Psycho, the experience. The experience
yeah.
of the thriller and how that's kind of above or exists at least side by side with aspects like script and story and whatnot. I can't tell you how surprised I was with some cinematography and the editing of the film, both for 1934 and today. The first killing has a shot of a glass spidered with all these fingers pointing at it. A great scene. The first kidnapping accusation is immediately cut into the kid's toy train speeding out of control. Just really good cuts, great visual storytelling. And let me tell you, Tom, there is a bonkers chair throwing fight in this movie.
People just throwing chairs left and right.
Oh, it's more than just some chairs. It is the chair throwing scene in all of cinema.
Really?
Yeah, I was dying laughing. I mean, it's definitely a little silly. It's almost I don't know, like vaudeville or something like
I'll
that.
check it out. I gotta maybe just YouTube it.
It is so wild. They're just caught. It is a chair fight. No one picks up a gun. No one picks up any even the broken legs of the chair as a weapon. It's full chairs.
Compared to John Wick, is it like John Wick when they open up the knife case and it's just the knife fight for a few seconds?
Yeah. If they make a John Wick 5, they got to rip off, in the trend of John Wick.
If they did an homage to the man who knew too much, something about that, that's poetic.
As well. Yeah, it's just so great. I would say without a doubt, and this is where some high praise comes in, this absolutely strikes a similar quality to watching a Citizen Kane, where the experience will shock you with how modern it feels. And let's not forget, this movie is 7 years older than Citizen Kane as well. So this was a really interesting thriller, though. And largely because it does not feel like anything that has come before it, obviously, but really anything has come since, including its own remake. Some of this is from the mad dash pacing, with the runtime only being 75 minutes. Some of this comes from a vastly different approach to writing a screenplay in the early 30s. But I believe the experience feels totally unique and worth your time because it's a product of Hitchcock working without peers or counterexamples, and hits on a theme of that we touch on when we're covering like new directors or new creative talent, that they don't know the rules and they're just kind of doing what they want to do on screen. And that's exactly the feeling that this gave me. We're going to go ahead and give The Man Who Knew Too Much, 1934, a 72.
72%, very good for a film this age.
Yeah, starting off strong.
Wow. I love that. I think that's so cool because, I mean, we always say like on the shoulder of giants. So clearly this is just like, what came before it. That's why this can exist. But that being said, sometimes you get these nuggets where they feel like they're on their own island, or the fact that you have a guy kind of in London at this time, just kind of doing it for himself, figuring it out while doing it.
Figuring out what a thriller would be.
It makes it more special. It makes it feel like you can't point to something 5 years before it or 2 years before and be like, oh, yeah, he just took this. Oh, yeah, he just took this.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's something about waffling around in that just kind of like gray area that it's kind of cool. It feels unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And really why it was, I would say, kind of worth your time in modern day. Like I said, it's going to surprise you if you watch this, folks, of how modern it feels. These editing, these cuts, these cinematography choices.
I mean, that production value then that he's able to create, or at least make you feel.
Sure, yeah.
That's impressive.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. And that chair fight, I mean, how many stunt chairs? I mean, I don't know how much what they would cost.
I'm going to have to go back and look at it. All right, so we're going to jump ahead 22 years. 1956. He's an American now, like you said. And yeah, we're adding 45 minutes onto the same story. This is 2 hours flat, this film.
Yep.
And we have Jimmy Stewart, Doris Day, so our big Hollywood American actors.
Sure.
Jumping into it right away, what are slight changes? Are we following the exact same story? Or are the story plots even changed up? And overall, how'd you like it?
Yeah, I mean, broad strokes, it really is the same. Devil is in the details. And again, it's just that those details have breathing room. It's not it's not trying to fit every plot beat and every scene into, 75 minutes. Like I said, though, folks, after watching the original 1934 film, I was far too curious not to watch this remake. The film is also being in direct comparison with each other, kind of made it awkward to cover this in a future week. I needed to kind of get my thoughts out while the 34 film was fresh in my mind. The story is pretty different from everything, including setting and what the script emphasizes for the unfolding story, but in my opinion, they really are the same. Just one film has more real estate to play with. Like I said, the quote that kind of sparked my interest the most is in responding to critics stating that this film was far superior. Hitchcock said, let me say that the first version of the film was the work of a talented amateur, and the second is now made by a professional. My take on it, Tom, is that everything is just more clearly laid out, especially around our terrorist group. Every breadcrumb we are given is useful, and where, in comparison, the original film felt minimalist and chaotic.
Yeah, okay, so that's where fleshing out can really add something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I will say I kind of prefer the first, both just time invested into the story, but also those chaotic elements were a selling point for the thriller experience for me.
Right.
But yeah, the broad strokes of the story are really the same. Family travels to a foreign country, learns of an assassination plot, and their child is kidnapped in exchange for their silence. The differences are all in the details, and if there is a truth to what Hitchcock said, folks, the credit goes to the writing team for fine-tuning these details, all in service to the mystery. This is where the masterstroke kind of came into play for me, in understanding the mystery so well that every aspect points towards it. There's not a single crumb of information that isn't positioned in some way or used in some way for the mystery. And that's where I was like, I can't really give credit fully to Hitchcock because that really is his writing team on this, which I believe is pretty much identical for one person.
I believe so, yeah. Yep, that's right.
But for the most part, that's where the brilliance I found was. And I was like, wow, these are some professionals at work.
Yeah, and this feels like a proper fleshing out.
Yeah.
Because that's value added.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This film marks one of the many collaborations between Jimmy Stewart and Hitchcock, this being the third out of 4 total. And I'll tell you, Tom, I'm in some hot water because I'm straight out of things to talk about Jimmy Stewart.
Okay,
I think I'm done. It's just his stupid fucking voice.
Whoa! whoa. Let's set the stage, folks. So we covered Jimmy Stewart. This is only our third film we're doing. Jimmy Stewart
I'm
film.
dry on Jimmy.
First film was alongside John Wayne in
Man Who Shot
Liberty Valance,
Yep.
movie that you really liked.
Absolutely.
He gave that an 84, right? And then we just covered him 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, Anatomy of a Murder.
Yep.
We did it when we kind of liked him. He did.
Sure.
He sold you on his character,
Right.
and you ended up enjoying him overall in that film.
Yep.
Our biggest thing for me and both of us with Jimmy Stewart is this higher pitched. What's going on here? And you know,
and the Goody Two Shoes vibe.
right, and that voice.
Yeah.
It just he can't do anything about it. It's like, oh, you're the Goody Two Shoe guy, but I mean,
Exactly.
hate to say it. The problem is, he's put into a lot of different roles, and when he is Hitchcock's guy a little bit. Is it 4 films he's in?
Oh, absolutely, he's got no less the most iconic Hitchcock films like Vertigo and things like that.
Right.
North by Northwest. I mean, that's all Stewart.
So it's how is he in this? How is he in this?
I'm out of things to say. He's Jimmy Stewart.
But give us thumbs up, thumbs down. Just give us a straight gladiator.
I said, give us a straight gladiator. Nice. I think I'm in some hot water because I got 3 more films to cover with him in Hitchcock, and
so you're not a fan. Not a fan.
More so, like I'm done talking about what clearly is the. My hot take with Jimbo is that he is the most successful character actor ever to work in Hollywood, and he is one character. He's a character actor put into leading roles, you know.
I kind of feel like he is so much. I don't know. It would be fun to just sit on it give it 10 minutes of thought. And who is that version of today?
Oh, sure.
But I kind of feel like, man, is it
still given prestige projects and stuff like that?
Like, is it right? I was gonna say Nick Cage, not because he's the same Goody Two Shoes, but the fact of when you hear the actor's name, you know you're getting this.
Yep.
How many Mr. Potato Head attachments can we put on him that can somewhat change up his role?
Yeah.
So when he's playing kind of a morally gray character in Anatomy of a Murder, he's still just Jimmy Stewart, Mr. Goody Two Shoes.
Right.
But there's an edge to him a little bit.
There's a little bit of a switch up.
You know
Here,
what I mean?
it's straight Stewart.
Really?
Yeah, a perfect example as well, just of the 2 other films we've covered. in Liberty Valance, he fits that character so well because he's supposed to be this moral upstanding, in the Outlaw
That was a
of the
character
West.
for him.
Right.
That's for sure.
Here, and I feel like
He plays a doctor in this.
Yes.
Right?
But he's so fish out of water and whatnot. I'll get into some of the setting work of the film.
I mean, I picture him going a lot. What's going on? That's what I hear.
He has one moment that's kind of good, but I'm telling you, I'm out of things to say. I'm out.
Okay, it is tough to think not action, but drama, thriller, suspense.
Yeah,
and him doing a good job at that.
Sure. Well,
maybe it's just that simple.
We will have to cover plenty with him doing that.
So it sounds like he didn't make the film bad, but he definitely wasn't like, oh, Jimmy Stewart really made this film.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. I think the real star of the show is Doris Day. She was flat out excellent in this. I think a type of emotional range I wasn't expecting from a mid-50s film. Complexity is also built into the relationship as well, which upped her personal stakes in the story. This is a good example of where characters are being utilized much more into it, where the first film, it was kind of like nothing.
How was her freak out when the kid was stolen?
Much better.
Okay.
Actually, Jimmy Stewart sedates her first and goes, right, yeah, there's your 50 vibes.
Right, there's 50. She tries to slap her and tell her to get a hold of herself.
Right. Which is actually a good scene. It's played, with Stewart understanding that he's kind of, verging on her freedom, but she really is just the best example of what I'm referring to with writing improvements. Here, the wife is a famous singer, which has a domino effect on the story, from strangers interested in their lives that may or may not be tied to this terrorist group, to tying in certain set pieces like an orchestra later on. In the first, the wife is like a competition clay shooter. It's just
that's awesome.
Right, awesome. But is used, I should say this, is not used, is so loosey-goosey and just a aspect of the mystery where is almost a misdirection in the information we are given.
Right.
Here, all the pieces of information lead
Every
to
aspect is utilized.
Exactly.
Story development, little things that happen.
Yeah, and she really is the best example of that because the wife was kind of left to do nothing in the first film.
Right.
So, also credit to Doris Day, also including this movie's sole Oscar win with her wonderful performance of the iconic track "Que Sera Sera," which is great. Featured once again as a plot point in it. Her and the son sing it together. So she sings it in like this upscale party to see if he's in the building. Just really smart writing like that.
So what was the actual Oscar win then? Under what category?
For Best Song, I believe. Best Original Song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the category might have been different.
But something like that. Okay.
Yeah. But for the song.
By the way, Doris Day, we only lost her in 2019.
Really?
Yeah, late 90s she made it too.
Wow. I mean, honestly,
the stories that she
was excellent in this. Really excellent.
Yeah, well, she's such a name. You hear Doris Day and you know, even like, I don't know if I've ever watched
yeah.
a thing with Doris Day.
Absolutely.
But respect as I know the name.
Yep. Setting-wise, we exchange the posh Swiss Alps for a shifty Morocco brimming with mystery. And it's kind of a double-edged sword for this remake. Sometimes this aspect shows the film's age in just the worst way possible. The more exotic settings means there are copious scenes with rear projected footage behind our actors, and it just doesn't look great at all. Like, not even doesn't look great in like an upscaling way, like they could never account for this. I don't think this looks great by 56 standards, honestly.
It's that bad. Can you get into, you've explained it once before, or a few times before on the podcast, but once again, rear projection. Is this classic? You're sitting in a still car,
Bingo.
and then you have just a screen in the back.
Sure,
going,
yeah,
right?
running B footage behind it.
Right.
And that's a perfect example of the type of scenes that we get in this. Anytime they're in a car, it's rear projection behind it.
Yeah,
that's okay. That doesn't look too bad. But while they're in Morocco, as you know, getting introduced basically to the start of the mystery, there'll be B footage of like street performers or a market bazaar.
It doesn't look like they're in Morocco.
Oh, it doesn't even look like they're anywhere.
Right. Full studio.
Full studio. They place basically 1 to 2 rows at best of sporadic people in front of our actors, and then the screen is right there. I swear to God, there was one scene where I thought I saw the screen flapping with the projected footage on it, and I mean, I really don't think it looks good even by 56
That's
standards.
not good production value. Yeah.
And it's in that exact scene is a perfect example of like, I'm not expecting them to go to Morocco for these in person. I would have loved it. It's fine if that's not the case.
Hitchcock at 56, I feel like he could have.
Sure, maybe pulling production money.
Yeah.
But when it comes to it, it's like it's how that one scene was done of the marketplace and. I mean, there's maybe at best 2 rows of extras between Stewart and Doris Day, and it's just like I don't know. It really took me out of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Another aspect where it's very aged in a way that, again, you just listen to the review for the 34 film, was not coming up as a criticism. Kind of a 1950s comedic tone that really just boils down to fish out of water jokes that feel super stale. There's an ongoing running joke of Stewart being too tall for these Moroccan like restaurants that he goes to, and he's like sitting awkwardly. I mean, this scene must go on for like an eternity. I was
hell for you.
Yeah, it's just pulling teeth.
What exactly is this? What it's feeling like the 50s? If I didn't tell you when the film was made and this is on, just by the content that's in it, are you saying to yourself, yep, this is 50s.
Absolutely. And almost on Stewart's shoulders alone. His usual shtick just comes through as a stink on the film.
Right. We really liked Anatomy of a Murder.
Yeah, I think the besides the hot take of him being a most successful character actor, I really do think it's just right scenario. Put him in the right role.
Yeah,
which could be the case with any actor.
I mean, to be honest with you, it sounds like he's almost perfect for the 50s. The biggest problem with the 50s is they're all way too squeaky clean.
Yeah,
it's all just. I don't even know. Rah, good old boy. Everything's good here. We don't get into a lot of darkness or suspense or thriller or negative tones. Mm-hmm. Man, that's Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, it is Jimmy Stewart for sure. For sure. Some of the aspects, though, it did have some of my favorite qualities of the film in this setting work, that is, and really it's around amping up the paranoia, and how masterfully that was done. Morocco really feels like a den of snakes for our characters, and just so much better of a setting than the posh Swiss Alps, where it's just like, who's the villain? I mean, if I didn't recognize, Peter Lorre from the poster, I wouldn't know who is the villain, Here, Morocco just really is just like such a shifty place. And plenty of scenes also alienate us by giving us zero subtitles between characters' whispers and whatnot. That, combined with the early fights between the couples, that's where a lot of this was beating the expectations of the 50s. At the same time, production elements really were playing right into, the worst qualities of, like, very clearly a studio movie.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of give and take, for sure, and why I was kind of split on this. There's a very personal reason why I wanted to watch a lot of these films, and it's for the music. Bernard Herrmann is a contender for top 3 composers of all time, and his collaboration with Hitchcock starts in the 1950s. My favorite track here was a quick 34-second track called Violence, where you can clearly hear the trumpet line that Herrmann uses in Cape Fear, that he does in 62. That
Wow.
It's just a real quick trumpet line that he puts into this, and it's just like, cut that, cut that. Just really great work across the board. The soundtrack, he utilizes the Royal Scottish Orchestra. And Herrmann also stars as the conductor in this, which is, I feel, a meaningful inclusion, considering music and the orchestra setting is more deliberately framed for this assassination plot, especially in comparison to the first one. Mm-hmm. So, folks, I have to admit, I personally think I kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit by watching the original first, or at least back to back. I should not have watched them back to back.
Really?
Yeah. On top of dooming this to the comparison game, the first film was so drastically shorter. I feel like this film was doomed to have some comment from me as a little wonky pacing,
Maybe. I don't know.
Off balance a little bit.
Maybe, or it just could have been done better.
Yeah.
This
was a hard one because it was a hard one to pin down what I really liked, really hated, and then kind of the
how does that play with the score? Yeah.
I also have to come clean about my gut feeling on another Stuart Hitchcock joint, 1958's Vertigo. And this is a big milestone for the podcast. This was something I was always sweating talking about one day, because I really don't care for Vertigo that much, and it's like universally considered like one of the greatest movies of all time.
Is it rated? Do we have it on the site?
No, I checked, and I might have deleted it. No. But not to pick a fight with a universally beloved film, but something between the tone of the thriller and Stewart being plugged into Hitchcock's style just doesn't work for me. And what I'm trying to say with this film is that there is a mix of reasons that make me lukewarm on watching it. Some of them are technical, some of them are performance, but overall, enough to detract from a much tighter, fine-tuned story that I still think is worth Hitchcock remaking. Let's go ahead and give The Man Who Knew Too Much, 1956, a 68.
Okay, 68. Wow. Very close.
Yep.
And it's almost, if you want to go and do a Hitchcock study or something like that, and or just, okay, what is this guy? Still maybe watch both, but I think they're different enough where you can watch them if you're in different moods. Does that make sense? Does that work?
Absolutely. I think for anyone that has a passing interest in looking at screenwriting and understanding how to craft a story, I feel like watching these back-to-back was a great study in the sense that, like, I saw very specifically where Hitchcock was able to, and his team was able to watch that first one and be like, that doesn't work. That literally goes nowhere. Let's scratch that. Let's tune this one towards the mystery. Let's have a payoff here.
Yeah.
It really did feel like they went in and they just dialed it in bit by bit.
I think it's a cool practice. I wouldn't be upset if more directors did it.
Yeah.
It's weird to do, I will say. It is a thing of redoing. I don't know if I love the aspect of, as long as there's merit in the first one still. And for instance, this one, there totally is.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But there's something else to be said of maybe just people redoing their films because the first one was shit. And now
Yeah,
it's like, which one do
that's
we watch?
George Lucas.
Oh, we brought this up last week with Zack Snyder cut too.
Oh, sure.
You know, not quite the same thing, but also which one do we watch here?
Yeah, I
You
feel
know?
like it opens up a can of worms of directors being obsessed with, kind of perfecting.
Not being able to let go, not being
yeah,
able to just leave
yeah.
it. But yeah. But I think it's cool that he did this. I like
Yeah.
that we cover both of them together.
Absolutely.
And then we'll be picking up Hitchcock next week with something else, which is cool. Let's jump to 1979 to this seedy, seedy underworld of California. What a jump we're taking into...
What a jump.
This film is called Hardcore. It is rated R. It's got our man, George C. Scott. We are doing I don't know what you call this.
Informal Scott study.
Yeah. And under the table. We're doing an under the table George C. Scott study.
Yep.
Like I said, I was just flipping through one Friday night, wanted to watch something, and I was going through his catalog because we're on such a high with him.
Yep.
The funny thing with George C. Scott is for how long or how many decades his career spans, he doesn't actually have a massive catalog of films under his belt where he's the lead, where he's the guy you're going to get in almost every scene.
Sure.
And kind of surprising, especially at the later part of his career, how many TV movies, TV specials, kind of TV one-offs he's doing.
I was looking at that 12 Angry Men TV movie that it was in.
Yeah, very surprising that, I don't know, he's a little bit difficult to work with, and yet still everyone respects him because of how good of an actor he is.
Absolutely.
Notably, he was, of course, the first film he did a lot of plays and stage work in the early 50s, mid-50s. First movie he ever did was Anatomy of a Murder from 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
First time actually on film.
Yeah.
He received a nomination for that for the Oscars, lost. He then had massive disdain for the Oscars.
Because of that.
Oh, yeah. When he won for Patton, didn't show up.
Whoa.
He was nominated
Bad boy.
3 times in his life, won once for Patton, doesn't care. Love Jisoo.
Well, the 70s also has is riddled with examples of people being, kind of throwing some dirt at the Oscars.
Right.
Marlon Brando with Godfather and whatnot.
Yeah. Taking a couple tangents there. 1979, Hardcore, starring George C. Scott. We'll take this one back and forth. Overall, I'll say right now, really enjoyed this one.
Yeah. I texted you.
Yeah, what did you say?
I said, wow, hardcore. Wow.
We see a lot of different George C. Scotts in this movie.
That we do.
Very literally.
I'll start it off again. This is a week of good posters. Oh my God, that's my daughter. We spoke about this off the podcast, folks, but this is possibly one of the craziest movie posters I've ever seen. It's just that line, oh my God, it's my daughter, and then a very small picture-in-picture of George C. Scott freaking out in the corner. Throughout the film, I don't know why I was thinking of this, but I was looking at that poster. I was looking at like the freakouts that he has in this movie. I was just like, I want that to be my first and only tattoo. Just George C. Scott like crying because he looks so crazy. But really good acting. Like
phenomenal.
But like
phenomenal.
It's so intense and
it's very intense.
Actually effective.
I think you're gonna say tattoo. Oh my God, that's my daughter. That would be pretty
that
good.
could be under it. That could be under
never
it.
says the quote in the movie, which is hilarious.
The most disappointing thing is that he never says that.
I did give you the heads up watching it,
You
right?
did.
Yeah.
You did. Yeah, because I when you were recommending it, I pulled it up right away. Unbelievable. Folks, a little bit of background here in production. Paul Schrader is writing and directing here, and I'm sad to say that's not always a good thing. This is actually the second film he directs, period. And just 3 short years after making his mark in 1976, writing both Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver and Brian De Palma's Obsession. So definitely some heavy hitters there.
Yeah, he was writing this, I believe, at the same time, basically as I think when Taxi Driver was being made, he was already writing this, but basically his next project right after Taxi Driver.
Yes. And, while there's no denying the man has some classic under his belt by this point, if you dive into his filmography, unfortunately, there is far more mediocrity in the 50 years since. This is something we felt on an old episode of the podcast covering 2021's The Card Counter. And if I had to give a quick breakdown, the characters he writes are always complex, with the story showing kind of an unflinching glimpse at their lives. However, sometimes these projects shift into a needlessly edgy and have too much of a focus on shock value in their approach. The best example I can point to of this is actually 1999's Bringing Out the Dead, which is another collaboration with Scorsese as well.
Yeah, which is
just a little bit too edgy. You know, it's basically like
so forgot about too, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting that you're critiquing his writing. I mean, he also does Last Temptation of Christ, I believe, with Scorsese.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people love Schrader as a writer. They say that when he gets directing, that's when kind of people don't love it. And for instance, like the Card Counter, maybe if he had a different director there, maybe the writing was even okay.
Yeah.
But just the movie making aspect suffered. With this, it was a huge problem. Like George C. Scott hated him as a director.
Oh, really?
Was fine with the writing. The executive producer, same kind of deal. Really respected him as a writer. But everybody was making comments about him directing. He just wasn't quite getting it, or it was difficult to. Whether he was just bad at setting the day up, and managing his people and staff.
Yeah.
But that's a critique I've heard for him.
Yeah. And really, I can't say I've watched anywhere close to even a quarter of his films.
A lot.
You know, but it is, you look at that filmography and it's like, oh, okay. I mean,
it's a roller coaster.
Yeah. No, but more so just like it's a low roller coaster. It's kind of doesn't escape, anywhere out of mediocrity for a lot of those projects.
Speaking of De Palma, we probably like him better than De Palma.
Yeah, maybe. It's
a drag
Actually,
we'll check in from a year from now.
I didn't note it down, but I mean, this boy is De Palma kind of trying to be a copycat of the intensity of subject matter in this film. This feels like right out of what's the one where you watched it as well? He gets the house and he's
The Burbs.
What? The Burbs. The Burbs. De Palma classic. Yeah. Master of suspense. But either way, yeah. But it felt like trying to the obsession with the grittiness that De Palma had. The blueprint's kind of here. With Schrader.
I was going to say, I think give it to Schrader almost, because think about what he did with Taxi Driver.
Sure, absolutely. And we didn't cover Obsession. Now I'm saying like, well, maybe we should have covered Obsession.
Right.
But the good news here is that while hardcore absolutely fits into that description, it earns its shock value by being used in the story and being used in contrast to George C. Scott's character and urges that edgy title to boot. Hardcore is a secret Christmas movie. Been a while since we've announced one.
Yes, it is.
No less for this movie. Set in a small, innocent town filled with a Calvinist family values and neighborly attitude. George C. Scott is our dad, and on the brink of losing his mind. Early in the film, we're only given a few crumbs to piece together his personal life and what may be going on the home front, but quickly that normalcy is shaken up. The spiral begins when his only daughter goes on a school field trip and ends up going missing. Could she have been kidnapped? Could she have run away? Or could something far worse have happened? In desperation, he tries turning to countless people for help, including a shaved private investigator played by Peter Boyle. Shout out to you. Go ahead.
Yes. That's what made me click play, by the way.
Oh, really?
I mean, I was in the movie to see George C. Scott, but what made me pick this one? I saw Peter Boyle, Frank and Everybody Loves Raymond, the grandfather of Everybody Loves Raymond. I said, let's do it. And he plays this,
scumbag.
He's a little chubby.
Yeah.
He still has his hair a little bit. I mean,
honestly, I was gonna note, like, he looks worse in this than he does in Everyone Loves Raymond.
Yeah, it's kind of true. Love him in this, by the way.
Yeah,
as kind of a scummy private eye.
Absolutely,
but still has some type of moral compass.
Yeah, just slightly, one of the many forces that George C. Scott's character is contrasted against.
Yeah.
George C. Scott is our rock. He's our dad, and then everything is just kind of contrasted against him. All of these, failed type of pleading for help. All of this is until he gets fed up and takes things into his own hands. We see the film transform into a deep dive of seedy, underground, late 70s erotica in L.A. and picks up a working girl partner to help him finally track down his daughter. Folks, due to our no spoiler format, it's going to be real tough to talk about some scenes that I loved in this film, simply because of how much this story really moves. I think my biggest praise for the film is that Schrader is able to accomplish such an evolution of his character in no less under 2 hours.
It's an hour and 48.
Yeah.
It's shocking
Yeah.
of how much traveling this goes. So basically, I mean, you said a small Calvinist kind of family.
Mm-hmm.
So Calvinist also, if you're not, very kind of strict religion.
Yeah.
And kind of just very hardcore religion.
Mm-hmm.
But they're in Grand Rapids. So we're starting Grand Rapids. And then we were flying through California.
Yeah.
We hit 3, if not 4 different cities in California, I think. Constantly moving.
And his character, Scott's willing to throw some cash at this problem, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's the good mover of the story. But really a huge amount of praise for how many places this story goes, not setting wise, like how much it evolves in such a runtime. And that's not only around the shock value of like an LA porn industry, it's also used to unpack and contrast our main character so we learn more about him. Setting work here is fantastic for that reason, utilized specifically to show us how characters react when pushed into the uncomfortable. The small-town vibe of Grand Rapids seems to have its character of its own, alongside everyone being, like, named Van something. Its religion, its values, all is great early setup that will be subverted when George C. Scott goes to L.A., and boy, is there a transformation here.
It is you were sitting in the dark and the lights are on, or you were sitting in the light and the lights were turned off, more than likely. There is an absolute tonal shift in this film.
It's wild.
And it's electric.
Yeah.
I mean, so
it's ballsy, I'll say. Like, it's ballsy by 79 standards, and obviously by that point, late 70s cinema is, like, all about shock,
And I gotta say, like, when we are back in Grand Rapids, and we're just hanging out, and you're with this Calvinist family, and just...
It's a Christmas movie.
We see him at work. The score is very basic and simple, but I almost already was kind of like, I'm digging this score. It's very soft and very mellow. I also think it's featuring a glass harmonica. I think it's called a glass harmonica. Anyway, shout out Benjamin Franklin. Or harpsichord. Is it harpsichord?
Okay.
Glass harpsichord?
It's definitely like choir, soft touch.
Well, it's almost that sounds like ringing bowls or ringing bells at some point.
Like the crystal.
That's a glass harpsichord, and that's Benjamin Franklin invented it. Whatever.
just
spend
flex those
30
history
minutes
buffs.
on that.
Yeah.
Regardless, it is still used when this tonal shift happens, when this light switch comes on, a complete entrance into a new world.
Yep.
He still even manages, I believe, to keep it in the main score a little bit. But man, he changed the music up like that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you have Taken. If Liam Neeson wasn't an absolute could kick everybody's ass, but still just needed to do whatever he did to find his daughter.
Right. This is definitely in the subcategory or subgenre of dad willing to do anything, to get his kid back. I would say the character he plays is too buttoned up at first and sticks out like a sore thumb in this seedy underground. So the challenge in infiltrating the criminal angle of what he's going into shows him getting smarter and smarter on how to get what he wants, include rocking one hell of a mustache. I mean, wow. And I'm with you 100%, Tom, on the soundtrack. At first, it's the soft church choir stylings at first, and how that shifts into something more darker, but also like chaotic in the actual song itself.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
To the point that certain songs are a tiny bit unlistenable at times, even. I was actually a big fan of this soundtrack for that reason. Not necessarily for enjoyment, but for how it's designed to unsettle the audience in like a slight horror way. A great example is in the track I think the track's called It Is Well Within My Soul, or It's Well With My Soul. It's this like church hymn that's playing, and as it goes on, it gets distorted and deformed and sounds like something out of like a John Carpenter film or like the original Alien or something like that. Like it's like a really cool soundtrack for its design to what this character is going through.
I completely agree. It turns you into liquid, and it's just you're dripping into this seedy underworld that you don't want to be in, really.
Yeah,
and it's also because that. Spot on with kind of that horror theme. It almost is kind of
because this is like a horror experience for this character,
right? And for us, it still is coming through as a dark thriller, or major suspense. The incoherence at times, or the mashing up, and the chaoticness it just plays. It
Yeah.
totally plays to what's happening on screen.
Yeah.
And then you cut, and then I think it's one of the best uses of "Helpless" ever
Oh,
by Neil
yes.
Young. I mean,
Absolutely.
really well. The sound design and the way it was put together, top notch.
Yeah, top notch. Really impressive. And again, not a soundtrack. We'll get to a soundtrack that's very listenable and that I've been listening to nonstop since
Okay.
watching the film. But so not one as far as like when I recommend soundtracks in the past, like give it a listen to itself. This one's more so to appreciate after the watch. To hear.
I blasted some
after.
of these songs while driving. I will say.
He wanted the weird, the
Yeah.
distortion. I'm glad we're on the same page with that too, because I think that's one of like the biggest things I appreciated about the film.
So noticeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the fact of like it goes to the extremes of like very soft like church hymns to like I don't know, industrial music from the late 70s. Like,
I mean, I couldn't wait. I mean, I it happened, and I said out loud, I said, I want this to be the whole movie. Give me this guy in this car with this music.
Oh, hell yeah.
Give him a gun and kick ass.
Yep.
I was so in.
Absolutely.
But even if you're not the biggest movie buff or anything like that, you're not watching it down to this granular level, it is so in your face that
Yes.
it's noticeable. This tonal shift in the movie, very apparent, very purposeful.
Yeah, and designed for that reason.
Yeah.
Folks, all of this is built up in a way to maximize the punch and culture shock of George C. Scott's terrible discovery. George does an excellent job here, and I don't say that just because of our recent love affair with his career, but we are in a love affair with George C. Scott. Here he strikes up his usual calculating stares and throws in a good handful of Pacino-style freakouts. Again, that crying scene that's on the poster, a great example, but he has a lot of freakouts that I was just like, man, this is great. He's just popping off.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
I feel like it's always at least in one film, one George C. Scott film, you get it. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was so good in The Hustler.
Yeah.
He was so good, but at the end where he's like, Eddie, you owe me money.
Yeah.
And he has a visceralness to him.
Yeah, or even when he like lays down the law to Eddie's girl in Hustler.
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like, whoa, you see just such a different side, and yeah, great. Love George C. Scott, best actor ever. But once again, I feel like the praise here for this film, folks, and why it's worth a watch is how this character evolves.
Yeah.
And evolves because of the surroundings he's pushed into. I was originally going to note that he feels a bit painful to see on screen for how awkward he is, basically when he's wearing the suit, when he's not slick to,
Yeah.
the environment he's talking to. But once again, it is all in service to contrasting his views, his character in the setting he's thrown into, and just like really, really some excellent stuff for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I told you this, where Tarantino spends a lot of time talking about this in his book, and it has these, I can't say it major twists in the film. Like things actually happen or presented to you pretty quick, and then we're on the hunt for his
Find the
daughter
daughter,
in a
yeah.
certain way. You know what I mean? But it's more so, like you said, where it goes, where you are taken and through the journey. It's very Tarantino-esque, where all of a sudden you're just like, how did we get here?
Yep.
Paul Thomas Anderson, even some of these left turns we take, so enjoyable to see back in 1979.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And credit fully to Schrader's writing skills in, just like the comments of the last film, fine-tuned. Everything's being used in this concept of, we have a deeply religious man, let's put him in the yuckiest, dirtiest, slimiest scenario imaginable, and see how he reacts, see how he evolves to overcome and get what he wants. Really just like, that's the dream, you know what I mean, as far as screenwriting goes. Like,
And it sounds simple,
Yeah.
but I think it's really easy. I think it could fail at so many points in the film. Whether you stick on something, I think the pace of the film really helps it, because we're not too stuck on something. It's pretty damn well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, my doubleheader recommendation for this one is absolutely the must-watch 2013's Prisoners, both because it is about dads that will go as far as they need to save their daughters, and that's a subgenre in itself. That's an absolute compilation idea for the site. Super dads. I think this was well worth the watch for its writing and performances, and maybe most of all, a Paul Schrader script that he pilots himself and comes out just as strong. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Hardcore 1979 a 76.
Okay, 76. Pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
Very good.
I'll tell you what, this gets 2 shoes and a lace for me all day.
Whoa, okay.
All day long.
All day long.
It's not bad enough to just get 2 shoes,
Yeah.
but it's not good enough to cross it over that mark.
Okay.
I think I told you this after I watched it and was kind of pitching it to you. Almost, there were so many scenes that I was liking, but it was, I wish he would have went this. I wish he did this or went there with this. And
Okay.
I felt like more could have been added on. You know what I mean? And I think if this film was made 20 years later now, or
Yep.
if someone watched this film and wanted to basically do the same thing, basically there's a lot of jumping off points. We could make it a little bit more electric.
Sure.
This was leaning in 2 shoes for a little while. But overall, where the story takes you, and also the character development between him and not the call girl, but the porn actress / sex shop worker, their development together.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
her helping to, on his quest, his mission to find his daughter, I think really worked. And
Yep.
there's a sweet point in this film, especially when things take a turn, where things get rolling really, really well. And there's just some ridiculous things on screen, very funny things in
Yep.
such a dark story. So it really elevated it to a pretty high mark for me.
Yeah.
Quick also shout out to Peter Boyle. I want to watch more with him now. I believe he does make an appearance in Taxi Driver.
Oh, really?
I've only seen it once years ago.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay.
But boy, it's at late 70s Peter Boyle.
I think you're alone on this one.
Dirty P.I. I love. As soon as you see him in the diner, I'm like, oh my god, I'm so glad I can press play on this movie.
Yeah.
George C. Scott, and then I got this Peter Boyle, this version of Peter Boyle. Are you kidding me?
Arguably in his prime, arguably not in his prime. He's got
Exactly
that
right.
bad haircut.
Exactly right.
Yeah. but,
Excellent film, folks. If you're in the mood for the 70s were just ripe with this Gotham level of cities in America.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, yeah, was the 70s.
Taxi Driver. You could
Yep.
throw this in there. If you're in a type of mood
Sure.
for that genre, Hardcore should be right there on your list.
Definitely in our blaxploitation study, same kind of vibe in a lot of ways. Yeah, I think really, really good example of why the 70s are so good because they don't hold any punches.
Yeah.
In the films.
And we love George C. Scott. George C. Scott continues to impress. We love.
He really does.
It's crazy.
We've been talking.
76 is a good movie. It's
Yeah.
not like phenomenal. It's not like.
No, I think it's a pretty good movie.
But yeah, it's
yeah. I think.
But he
George-
gets 2 shoes and 2 laces.
I can't wait to cover more things with them. And again, we were kind of talking off podcast about this, folks. I mean, just to even revisit now with an appreciation of George C. Scott, to revisit him in like Doctor Strangelove
Absolutely.
or Patton or anything like that.
I think
It's just
Patton
like-
should be the crescendo. Am I using that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Climax.
Yeah. Okay, all right. 76 for Hardcore. Let's keep things moving here. We're just spending some time on these here. Before we move on to our movies that are in theaters, just take a quick minute here to remind people that the daily ratings, we kind of want to go about things a bit differently as far as so many podcasts using advertising and just shoving them in your face and down your throat, and it's just terrible, or people making you pay to even get access to content. This kind of stuff, we don't want to get into that. Basically, we're going off a different model. It's called the value for value model. So are you finding value in the daily ratings and what we're doing here? So are you using the site? Are you listening to the podcast, checking in once in a while? That's value in your pocket. We ask you, can you give us some value back in our pocket? So you go to thedailyratings.com, you head to the donations tab, and through your monetary support, you one, show us the value that you're getting, and 2, you become an actual legitimate producer of the daily ratings. Just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a project, you become a producer of that project, and that's how we're doing it here. So anyone who donates to the daily ratings, whether it's a big donation, small donation, it's whatever you want, you are still a legitimate producer of what we got going on here at the daily ratings. So it's just a different way of kind of doing things. We don't want to deal with ads and pitch products that we don't care about. We don't want to have paywalls on the site. We don't want to be subscription based. We don't want to deal with Patreon, and there's different level tiers, and the whole idea, everyone's got different finances. Everyone's got something going on this week that's different than next week, and whatever. There are some set donations on the site that are fun if you want to use, or it's like I said, as big or a small donation, you peg the number to it, send it our way. and we just appreciate it so much. You can become a producer of the Daily Ratings. It's thedailyratings.com. Head to the donations tab. And thank you. Vin, let's keep things going here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to step into this film, which is technically a 2023 film because it came out, I believe.
Oh, really?
I think it was TIFF, or the Toronto International Film Festival.
Okay.
But now is when it has its U.S.
Interesting.
theater release.
Late in the year to get one of these. Okay. Interesting. I didn't catch that.
This is called Boy Kills World, and let's get into it a little bit. It's not doing very well.
No, it's really not.
But it's an action film. Let's see if it packs a punch, set it up, and how'd you like Boy Kills World?
Well, I'm happy to say that this is an action film that is really trying something new, just not sure it all works out for it. Self-described as a fever dream action flick, there are plenty of inventive action sequences that will drop your jaw, but as a whole, the experience comes off closer to an action comedy, if anything, and, if anything, leaning 60% towards that comedic spin that... Folks, you know me. I might as well just say it outright. I don't like comedies.
Right. And this is supposed to be, and is it its purpose to not be?
It's trying very much to be funny. In a lot of ways.
Okay.
Absolutely. Again, I as much as this is a bloody, hyper-violence, beyond hyper-violence action film, video game-like in a lot of ways, it's really just more so, it leans into his comedy for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of different ways as well. The movie features a heavy voiceover from Archer and Bob's Burger fame, H. John Benjamin. And while it feels like the writing is stripped right out of one of those shows, the real issue is that he has no one to bounce his improv off of, or his ad-lib type of lines that come over as a internal monologue for our main character. It's also very clearly an aspect that is either going to work for you or it is either really not going to work for you. But it's a hard consideration to make because his voiceover work is nonstop for the whole runtime.
Constant talking.
Constant. Because it's basically the internal monologue of our main character who is deaf and mute. So he has no other way to communicate. And it's even an internal monologue in trying to read lips of other characters.
Wait, so... Bill Skarsgård's the main guy.
Yep.
But it's not Bill Skarsgård actually doing like the vocal work?
Oh, no, yeah. He's completely silent in this film. Completely.
But as far as the narrator then, who's supposed to be his thoughts,
is
not the voice of Bill
John
Skarsgård.
Benjamin. Yep.
Oh, all right.
So, I'll say this. I'm not really, I wouldn't consider my fan of Archer or Bob's Burgers. No hate against it, just never really watched it.
Sure.
I feel like it's just something to kind of note for this film. If you're a fan of H. John Benjamin, this probably goes up considerably as far as the recommendation and watching it, because he's kind of the real star of the show in a lot of ways. At the same time, if you are annoyed by H. John Benjamin, I was not one of them, but if you are annoyed by his voiceover work, that's also probably now a hard pass. This sinks down considerably lower.
Right.
Production talent is really a bunch of newbies on this, most notably our director, and where I wanted to give this film a chance, being very stylized and whatnot. This does have a super interesting music pick, though. Ludwig Forsell has been primarily tied to Hideo Kojima, doing fantastic work on MGS5 and Death Stranding. The music tracks here themselves might not be mind-blowing, but there's a cool follow-through to make everything semi-muted, in line with our main character's kind of experience. In a lot of ways, without ever going into a first-person view, a la Hardcore Henry for an action comparison, there's a lot done to make this like a video game experience and like the experience of our main character, of how he experiences the world.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy Kills World is a full-on cartoon action comedy film in a real Saturday morning kind of way. My elevator pitch for this is like a fun little gem you'd catch on Toonami back in the day. Our main character is simply named Boy, who is fully mute and deaf. He gets the voice in his head from an arcade game he played growing up, and once again voiced by H. John Benjamin. He lives in a nightmare city run by a criminal syndicate going on 25 years, who employ a yearly public execution called the Culling. Not very inventive. This puts one hell of a chip on his shoulder, and either through his own psychotic mind or his psychedelic training, he becomes an instrument of death to take down the syndicate. This stars Bill Skarsgård, one of the many Skarsgård's kids, and is what has become a real acting dynasty. I think casting him as a mute character unfortunately does take away his main strength of verbal dialogue, and being a strength he had in horror projects like 2022's Barbarian, and of course as Pennywise in the It franchise.
Yep.
However, much like his brother Alexander for his Viking role in The Northman, the physical transformation here is huge. Context is key. Obviously, Bill is bulking up for the Crow remake or in the production timeline of this.
Yeah, that's right.
Which
I think is a great role for him, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to be more on board.
I thought so, too, until I saw the trailer. I was actually kind of excited, I would even say, until I saw that trailer.
Okay.
But that's a tangent.
Dude's getting buff, though.
Yes,
for
dude's
multiple
getting
reasons.
buff. Absolutely. You might notice the boy's bright red jacket first, but his silhouette on screen sells his killing ability. And hopefully that can be transferred to the doomed Crow remake. Hopefully that will be transferred at least. This also has some nice action talent thrown in. His master trainer, the shaman, is played by Yan Rohin, famously kicking serious ass in The Raid and a handful of other films. And this marks another entry for Sharlto Copley, which I was excited to see, but unfortunately he has an even shorter role than Monkey Man. So just listen to the Monkey Man review for my praise of Sharlto. On the bad side, it's all in the comedy. The comedy here was really meh, and unfortunately it just touches everything. If anything, even without being a fan, H. Sean Benjamin kind of saves a lot of scenes, especially being funny among nearly every other character not being funny. Characters have, this is where this like Saturday morning cartoon vibe comes into play. Characters are just so cartoonishly evil, so just of the mentality of like, oh, this is a fun action film. I don't know. It robs something from the legitimately good action in this film.
Yeah, I mean, if you're too comedic, you're taking away from the seriousness of it.
Yeah, and I didn't need this to be fully serious. I would be fully happy with, just a little bit less jokes from other people. Give it all to H. John Benjamin, because I feel like that did kind of work, especially with like some like facial acting from Bill Skarsgård. But it's just more so how the jokes are layered, just deflating a lot of scenes. And deflating is the word, that you'll get like the build up to something really, really cool action-wise, or, even so simply as like Skarsgård has an interesting like foreign object weapon in his hand. I'm like, I can't wait to see what he's going to do with this to kill a bunch of guys. And then like jokes will just like deflate the whole scene. And then the scene ends without a fight. And it's just like, ooh, no, that's not good.
Yeah, that's just...
that's not great.
You're breaking rules.
Yeah, it's not great. Like, prioritize your action in the movie called Boys Kills World. You know what I mean? So... the action itself does feel dreamlike in a lot of ways, giving the boy superpowers without sacrificing visceral stakes. And you can 100% add this to the subgenre of movies that feel like a video game without actually being based off one. There is a lot of fun work with weapons, especially foreign objects thrown in. For equal parts badass, but also comedic beats. That's where I think the comedy works. It was kind of brutal as far as the action, and that's a compliment to the action. But he gets a cheese grater in a kitchen at one point. It's like, but like good action.
Yeah.
Still plays to comedic beats as these henchmen are like, yeah, like Wilhelm screaming basically. So I think it's a balance, because I liked how the action was positioned. It did not feel weightless, even though it is very snappy. It's very video game-like. In research, it looks like some of the stunt talent comes from the viral Kung Fury series, which just makes total sense once you see how scenes flow on screen, and how action is capitalized either with a good action set piece or some bad comedy.
I believe there's some... It's funny. What was it? Kung Fury?
Yeah, Kung Fury.
Yeah, the writers come from that. Or the one guy
that
at
as
least.
well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's kind of funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that being said, once again, like my comments with H. John Benjamin, that could be some skin in the game. Kung Fury series as a viral series, funny. Just maybe didn't need to be in its own shtick coming into this feature release. So, especially when so many things were going right for it.
Yeah, it sounds like a badass action flick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Folks, to me, this felt somewhere between two films. It felt like a halfway decent version of that Prisoners of a Ghostland Nick Cage movie we covered that was just like absolute dog shit. And like a so bad it's good dog shit. Or better yet, capturing some of the sheer campiness and dystopian vibes of something like Equilibrium with Christian Bale, which coined gung fu as a phrase actually put in the film. So somewhere in between those films, and I think that illustrates that neither of those films are very good on their own. You know what I mean? It's just kind of somewhere in between. I can't say this was the highest quality experience, but I will say I want to give some points to the fact that you can really feel a creative vision here, and most of all, an honest attempt to make a video game-inspired action flick with all original ideas. With that said, we're going to go ahead and give Boy Kills World a 58.
Okay, 58. Yeah, these action films, and like I said, it's not doing very well. It's a shame that something like it has promise as far as how it looks and the action and everything like that, but that's so marred by just the overuse of comedy. Yeah. It's just, man, it's the death of so many films.
Yeah.
Kind of films like this, and I think that's what's shocking and why you love like somebody like Edgar Wright so much is because he can be witty or quirky or comedic at times.
Right, and not sacrifice action.
Yeah, he sells it.
Yep.
Yeah, he totally works in with the characters well enough where you're loving it, not being taken out of it, essentially.
Yeah, and again, not to overanalyze this meant to be fun action movie, this easy popcorn boys watch. Like when the payoff for a scene is supposed to be action and then it's deflated with comedy, that comedy that doesn't work, it's like a real slippery slope. Unlike, I don't know. I mean, this film is shooting itself in the foot. So.
Yeah. All right. That's 58 for Boy Kills World. We have one more film here, folks. So let's get into it. This is the talk of the town. This one, again, not a phenomenal box office it's been lately.
Okay.
But
interesting. I would imagine all the internet hype would surge into that.
This does have hype.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, here we are. It's this Luca Guadagnino.
Whoa, you did it good. You did it good on the intro.
Luca Guadagnino.
Yep.
Luca Guadagnino's latest flick. This is now, I think we're covering on the podcast of them coming out. Third film, I believe.
Yep.
That's how long we've been doing this, apparently.
Yeah.
This is called Challengers. It's a tennis movie. It's got Zendaya in it, two other guys. Set it up for us. It is the talk of the town. It's being really talked about. Critics are like either drooling over it or just loving to talk about it. Why don't you put your stamp on it, Vin? How did you like Challengers?
Well, Challengers was not something I was excited at all to cover. I saw the love triangle in this. I was like, no, thanks. But this film really won me over. It really won me over.
Okay.
It was a quality movie. Like you said, Tom, latest film from Luca Guadagnino, an Italian director that has an impressive run in the last few years. We covered both of his films from Timothée Chalamet on the podcast. That is 2017's Call Me By Your Name and 2022's Bones and All on release. And while he has dipped into horror stylings, especially for the excellent Suspiria remake, I believe his true trademark as a director lies in exploring complexity of relationships. And let me tell you, for Challengers, this is taken to a whole new level with shifting power dynamics, a sexy love triangle, and the heat intensified on the tennis court. I'll be honest, I was not really excited at all to check this out at first. I think around this love triangle angle, it was just usually a writing trope I get nauseous at. You know what I mean? It's just so been there, done that, and comes out one way. But we'll get into where that is subverted in how he pairs the romance with sports and how it's not just a love triangle. It's much more than that. But in research, I found some also interesting qualities that kind of whet my appetite, and hopefully I can kind of do the same for, if you find that you're not really excited about this film at home, folks. Writer Justin Krzyzewski, I think it's Krzyzewski, is a true newbie, so I found myself curious on how the script would fare. The story has a great postmodern spin, shuffling the details of the romance around for us to puzzle together in a wonderful way. And then for the sports aspects, has a great rhythm structure of our story within the final match, basically in the future. So we're constantly jumping around to the past of their relationships, the past of their tennis career, and then also intercutting frequently into a chopped up final match between our two male leads. Really, really good as far as its structure. Again, if my concern was that this love triangle was going to be generic in any way, that structure, that the way that the information is delivered to us, the way we piece that together as the audience, that's where, it really won me over in a lot of ways.
Was it too choppy? Like, so for instance, it's kind of putting itself as a sexy tennis movie.
Yes.
I remember that's how it was even being pitched, even I think back in like October, November,
yeah.
when this was, because it was supposed to come out last year.
Oh, really?
But some of the talk about it, I was hearing sexy tennis. Now, I was excited for the film originally because I want a good tennis movie.
Right.
I'm just kind of, I don't know why I'm craving that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's give us something electric with that. It's something that we just don't have often.
Yep.
And so when you see Luca Guadagnino, it's okay. How much is really going to be sex-related relationship? Just like you said, how much do we focus on that? How much do we focus on tennis? So,
and the
fact
answer
that
is that it's both, basically.
Okay, but the fact that our final match is chopped up throughout the movie, is the pacing weird? Are you jumping around too much? Do you actually wish that it was more so just larger gaps between our time jumps?
No, because this is what overcame any kind of formulaic expectation of that love triangle and how it was playing out.
Gotcha, okay.
And also that final match is contextualized by the movements that we are given, the breadcrumbs we are given, and why the relationship panned out the way it did.
Gotcha, okay.
So very unique in that approach, and a huge praise for it. More importantly, though, the soundtrack is done by the legendary Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, and believe me, it makes it worth checking out the movie for that alone. I thought this was a fucking incredible soundtrack.
Yeah, these are your boys.
Oh, yeah, and have been listening to it non-stop ever since. Bumping, racing synths, and house beats perfectly frame the intensity on the court. Like something you would hear in like a Gran Turismo game. The music conjures the feelings of competition day butterflies. And the use of this styling is downright brilliant when these tracks bleed into arguments within the love, tennis, ambition triangle that the movie is structured around. Also, not to nerd up this very sexy movie, but the movie really did remind me of a 10 out of 10 anime called Ping Pong the Animation, where a similar vibe is like it's ping pong, but they have these like racing like synthwave tracks in it. It's just great. Folks, this is 100% the front runner for best soundtrack of 2024 as of right now, as of recording in early May.
Yeah.
And not to mention there's a official remix album by the house artist Boys Noise, which is just straight up required listening. I mean, like this, I am in love with
Talk about right up
this
your
soundtrack.
alley. I mean, this is just...
I am so in love with the soundtrack. So cool, just amazing.
Is it doing heavy lifting here, or it's all just playing well together? Like,
I think it stylizes the sports to be very intense. Again, these like competition day butterflies.
Yeah.
It's the racing synth of this, but at the same time, it's I don't know. It really does add something to this ambition angle that the love triangle is about love.
Yeah.
It's about tennis, but it's also about like ambition and the ambition of these three characters as well and how that interplays. And I feel like that ambition angle is where this soundtrack, in addition being, great listening music, awesome, design-wise, had substance to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, cool. So. I mean, yeah, as soon as I saw that these guys were doing the music, I thought, all right, it's got some teeth. There's some talent here.
Exactly.
Not that there's not other talent in it.
Right,
but you know what I mean?
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Like, I needed to kind of do some pre-research to whet my appetite a little bit to watch the film because I was like, this is
I was more excited than you about it.
Yeah, you were.
And that's what I said at the beginning of the show. I want to be excited for this film. Like, I want to go see it, and at the same time, I don't know if I want to waste my time with it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's why I said I wanted to actually just hear what you had to say about it.
Right. Challengers is a sleek sports romance driven by passion on and off the court, hardcore relationship dynamics, and hardcore tennis matches, all designed for characters to push each other around. like I mentioned in this story segment, it is shuffled and starts with us towards the end of the relationship, which is intercut with the breadcrumbs of how we got there. But where we really focus our time is the hot and heavy sparks that see both of our male leads fighting for the attention of Zendaya. All of this comes to a head in present day, where we see one unfortunate matchup rekindle the embers of the past. The story is really a three-way split, so let's talk about all three of our stars. Zendaya is pretty great in this, and kind of flirts a sociopathic line simply because of her character's skill level. She has a kind of a disconnect because she's that good at tennis.
That intense athlete, too.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. They need to be in their own world.
Right. And definitely a characterization you can see in all three of our characters. Again, where this overcomes some of my blahness about the love triangle aspect is that the triangle is used as a structure in these characters in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, all three characters are the same. All three characters are after the same thing. All three characters want to be the best at tennis. So there's a lot there that interplays. And I will say one slight critique with Zendaya is that if you're in the camp that you were not impressed and did not get impressed by her in Dune 2, I have some doubts that she will wow you here. I think it's very good, but I don't feel like this is a not a breakout role, but maybe a career-defining role, despite so much of the focus being on her.
Okay, all right.
There's not even any specific moments in the film that I would point to and say that was good or that was bad. It was just Zendaya, and I don't think that this film would be again, win over the people that were maybe blah on her to begin with from Dune, from Euphoria, or anything like that.
Yeah, my biggest thing, I liked her in Dune too. My biggest thing with her, especially with her and Timmy, and I just thought the kids felt like kids and to nowadays real world kids. Do we feel her age in this? Like, has her age sold, or does she kind of seem like too young for the role?
Definitely not too young.
She just seems forever like 19 years old to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And this plays with a huge time gap that is able to utilize that, actually. You tie her hair back, and she's able to play the 18-year-old that the story starts with.
But how about playing an adult, though?
Absolutely. And I feel like that some of it comes with just her confidence on screen. If there's a trademark to her acting, it's that she's able to, I don't know, kind of be unshaken on screen, and this definitely plays into the character.
This is where I always have, I'm still shocked that Margot Robbie is 33 years old.
Oh, right.
Or whatever, 32 or 30, whatever.
Yep.
Young 30 still. Because to me, she's always has appeared older on screen than what she really is. And it really, I don't know if it gave her confidence, but as a viewer, set this stage as a character that, I don't know, it's believable in her role kind of deal.
Sure.
And that's my biggest thing with Zendaya, where you watch her in those Spider-Man films. Man, she seems like such a kid.
Sure.
And she still physically kind of looks like such a kid a little bit.
Right,
you know what I mean? So
stature-wise,
is that hindering her a little bit? But that's good that she's playing it up.
Yeah.
She's doing a good job at it.
Yeah. Mike Faist is one half of our male duo who we've seen in the West Side Story remake and will be in the upcoming film The Bike Riders. Online consensus is that people think he's actually the villain of the story, but I would strongly assert that there's kind of no villain of the story. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but this triangle aspect is, it's much more than just a love triangle. It kind of goes in all directions. And I think the strength of his performance is actually just how unclear that portrayal is. The fact that people are, I don't know, it's up to interpretation, but the fact that people are assuming or finding in their experience that he's the villain to them, I feel is the strength of his role being that unclear. And finally, Josh O'Connor is someone we have no experience with on the podcast, but might steal the whole show. He really captures what this film is about, shifting around constantly while still showing emotional vulnerability, whether that be a ploy to bring someone in or be genuine emotional vulnerability. What I appreciated most about this love triangle and where it's been something that I've rolled my eyes at in reviews of the past is that how our characters are all really, really gray. There was a great ongoing line in the film of something like, we're just talking about tennis, which might be a little heavy-handed at times, but frames the mindset of these characters of how they are always in the game, so to speak, whether that is truly about tennis or whether it's nowhere close to tennis. I think that aspect as well, the sports vibe of this film, it is a good sports movie for that reason, because I feel like it tells the story of hyper ambitious characters that would be in the circuit, would be, in this type of rubbing elbows kind of posh society.
But it doesn't sound like we're really in the circuit all that much. How much time is spent on the court?
Tough to say. We do get a lot. But it's tough to say.
Well, go back to the only thing we really covered then, the King Charles movie.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I think that's really the only...
I would say more tennis.
Really?
Because
Okay.
King Charles was just so much training. I mean, yes, that's technically tennis, but it's not like,
Love
One,
right,
or
right.
I don't even know. Praising tennis, but we don't even know tennis. I think I took one course in college. It might be surprising to hear, but while this is rated R, has marketed itself almost exclusively on sex appeal, it really only earns that R rating by swearing on the tennis court. Much like Luca's previous film, Call Me By Your Name, the themes of sexuality and intimacy are amplified specifically without showing too much. This film is, straight up hotter for exactly what it doesn't show, and somehow even more so, a real case of less is more. But that's exactly where our Italian director shines, because he is able to create so much more than just sexual tension through this. Distrust, suspicion, and most of all, drama is really earned through this. And again, I mean, I feel like it's almost like required to comment on it, because the marketing of the film is leaning into the fact that it's going to be like a threesome every other scene. That couldn't be farther from the case. If anything, this is even tamer than Call Me By Your Name, which had some very raunchy themes to the romance in that. This is very safe in a lot of ways, and much more about relationship dynamics, manipulation, things like that.
That's surprising to hear.
Yeah, but kind of a good. I feel like it was not in a prudish way, but a kind of a classier film for that reason, and not exploitive in the way that the expectations were. This was an area that, again, the film won me over by having themes speak louder than it would be if they just showed it fully on screen, Last thing I want to praise is camera work. The production is not afraid to use some digital effects, which concerned me at first. But much like my overall excitement going into it, it did turn me around. I loved everything in the court, including a couple of first-person scenes thrown in that matched that energy of the music. There's also a great sequence towards the end where the camera work simulates a tennis ball being thrown back in, being hit back and forth with a cool 360 camera work. And folks, if you know me by now, presentation of the action in sports movies is paramount for me. Boxing is always what I used to harp on of how are we presenting within the court, or how are we presenting within the ring in that case. How we present in the court here is done very creatively and constantly switching things up, and really, really was a highlight here. So though I wasn't in love with all of the visuals all the time, I appreciate Luca playing around with how it is presented in the tennis court. So I think the big theme here is that my expectations were nothing. Yeah. I was pleasantly surprised, and beyond pleasantly surprised to come around and say, I really do love this film. Wow. I think this is a very strong showing. It might be Luca's best, maybe Suspiria in second place. Overall, one hell of a sleeper hit for me. Personally, was great enough to overcome my just sheer apathy with the film. Allow me to say this officially marks 2024 as a great year for cinema. We've been whispering about it when the mics are turned off. Whoa! We've been talking about it and saying, how are people not talking about this? And one of handful of films that is in the 80-plus catalog. Give it a watch. We're going to go ahead and give challengers an 80 on the dot.
80 on the dot. Vincent Daly.
Yep.
I mean, this really reminds me a lot like Civil War the other week. Going in with extreme apprehension.
Yes.
Or just like, do I really want to...
Right.
How good is this? Is it worth all the chatter, the talk?
Yep.
And coming away
the
from
work
it
down
very,
the road,
very positive.
to write about it then,
Also similar directors, I feel like, where indie... but well known.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Building hype.
Yeah, big time. So, wow, Challengers at an 80%. Sexy tennis film.
Sexy tennis film 1, yeah.
Wow, okay. Good to hear.
Yeah,
Good to
yeah.
hear. I mean, I know you like Guadagnino.
Yeah.
Bones and all, I don't know if that actually got rated too high.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
I think I want to say high 60s.
I think it was a COVID production, too. And I don't know if it just didn't have a big release.
Yeah. That was a hard one to review as well.
Right.
So.
Well, that's true, too.
Yeah.
This is, like, really getting talked about and definitely biggest as far as blockbuster, I want to say. It certainly feels biggest just because maybe how large the movie actually feels.
Yep.
You know, and the traveling and everything. So 80% for Challengers. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick, I mean, just so we have 3 main actors here. How much of the screen time is shared? Are we mostly with Zendaya and then we're with the other 2 bros, or is it pretty shared?
I think it's pretty evenly shared. If anyone, Josh O'Connor maybe takes third fiddle. But
and you liked him the most.
I did. But I really can't praise enough that this escapes the tropes. This escapes what you expect with a love triangle.
Right.
And instead uses that as a platform to structure the film in every way possible that these 3 characters are interacting. And again, that's really the crux of where this won me over and said, wow, okay, this is not just an excuse to get these characters in a threesome on screen, or just an excuse for a tennis film with some hot stars, you know?
Which was the concern, kind of. And just going into it, do I want to spend the money on a ticket?
Even its own marketing.
I'm excited to watch it now. I am going to watch it. The question is it worth a theater watch, or can you wait till streaming for this one? Like Love Lies Bleeding, I definitely want to watch it. I think for me, I'll wait for
probably streaming. That's a good question. I would say yes, theater only for Dolby. Because that soundtrack is booming.
Okay.
And so much so, I saw Boy Kills World back to back, and I went in a normal theater for that, and I was like, is the sound broken? Like, what's going on?
Excellent, Vin. Well, a good array of movies here. Anything you want to touch on? Any closing notes or roll credits?
I think we can roll credits. This is run long, so...
All right, just a reminder, folks, on Sunday, we will be in Philadelphia at the Philly Fan Expo.
If you can't make it, keep an eye on the socials. We'll obviously be posting some stuff, and yeah, it'll be a good time.
Yeah, we'll see how the day goes. We'll talk about it next week, too. Let's see how it goes. I know that we're going to have fun regardless. Anyway, Vin, thank you for getting 5 movies watched this week. Thanks for stopping by here this evening. Folks at home, we'll run it down one more time. We have The Man Who Knew Too Much with a 72%. We have The Man Who Knew Too Much with a 68%. We then have Hardcore with a 76%, Boy Kills World with a 58%, and ending it with Challengers with an 80%. So, folks, thanks so much for stopping by and listening here. We will see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or get the word out and tell a friend about us. And just a reminder that the Daily Ratings is completely producer-supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding any value in the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com, and while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.